In a clear, welcoming tone, welcome back aboard the SES Sentinel of the Stars, everyone. This is Nova, your friendly onboard AI, and you're tuning into episode 7 of Over the Hilldivers. Today, we're diving into a crucial topic the toxic chemicals recently found at Lake Maurepas, Louisiana. Stay tuned as we break it down and explore what's really going on beneath those waters. And we're live.
All right, thank you. You got a little deep there at the end, but I appreciate it. I really want to go down there and help my fellow hell divers above this planet. As you can see, all this activity. Oh, they just fired a laser at us. It's terrifying. I want to go down there, but I can't until we make sure as many people as possible know about the toxic chemicals found in Louisiana. All right, and so now we're gonna transition. The title card will go up. There'll be some music, and then we're gonna get into the opening part of the podcast. So there we go. We did it. I did it. I'm gonna be able to edit that in with some music and stuff. It'll be great. Okay, seriously, let's just get right to this topic. It was brought to my attention, and I figured I would try and get as much information on display as possible. Let's start with the basics. What toxic chemicals have been found in Lake Maurepas, and how serious is this problem?
Absolutely, Captain. That ball sounds great, and I love the energy. We're definitely rolling with it live, but it's going to turn out awesome once you add that music and those edits. So let's jump right into the topic. Starting from the basics, the toxic chemicals found in Lake Maurepas include heavy metals like arsenic, lead, cadmium, nickel, copper, and manganese. Some of these are levels over 4 times the safe limit for lakes and way above EPA drinking water thresholds. Basically, it's serious enough that scientists are calling it a public health and ecological emergency. And from there, we can just roll on to the other questions and make sure everyone's got the full picture. Let's do it.
Where in the world are we talking? Let's get a location for our listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. Let's pin it down. We're talking about Lake Maurepas, which is in southeastern Louisiana, right between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. It's kind of tucked into that low-lying bayou region. So folks who are local to those areas or anyone familiar with Louisiana's water bodies will know it's a pretty significant spot. So that's our setting for today's topic.
And where are these particular chemicals coming from?
Yeah, so these particular chemicals are basically flowing in from a mix of sources. You got industrial and agricultural runoff coming down from rivers like the Blind River, the Emmett River, and the Tickfaw River. On top of that, there was a big incident with a vehicle pileup on the Pass Manchac Bridge, which dumped a bunch of pollutants into the connected waterway. So it's really a combination of ongoing chronic pollution and these sudden contamination events all feeding into the lake.
Understood. Let's move over a little bit and talk about some of the current health risks. What does this mean for people who live near or rely on the lake?
Absolutely. Let's get into that. So, for the people living near Lake Maurepas or those who rely on it, the health risk can be pretty significant. Direct exposure, like through swimming or even using the water, means potential contact with things like arsenic, lead, and cadmium. Even in small doses, those can cause long term damage to organs and the nervous system. Then there's the indirect risk, like mercury building up in fish. Even if the mercury levels in the water are technically within limits, it can accumulate in fish tissue. That's why there's a state advisory suggesting women of childbearing age and young kids limit how much certain fish they eat, like big mouth buffalo or largemouth bass, just a couple meals a month. So it's really about both direct and indirect health precautions for the local community.
And what exactly does the fish advisory say now, currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So the fish advisory right now is pretty specific. For a fish like bigmouth buffalo and flathead catfish, they're advising women of childbearing age and kids under 7 to limit their consumption to about 3 meals per month. For black crappie and largemouth bass, if even a little more restrictive, they suggest just 2 meals a month for those same groups. Adults outside those groups don't have a formal limit, but a lot of experts still say it's smart to be cautious. So that's the gist of what the advisory is laying out right now.
Understood, understood. Okay, before we get to environmental impacts, let's have a moment with our sponsors. Okay,
Absolutely.
so today's sponsor for a 30-second spot is Standard All Everywhere Onesie.
Voice. Today's episode is brought to you by the Standard All Everywhere Onesie, your go-to outfit for any mission from deep space to deep sleep. Whether you're navigating the cosmos or just lounging at home, slip into comfort that's always in regulation style. With a design that's as versatile as you are, the All Everywhere Onesie is a uniform you didn't know you needed. Grab yours today and suit up for whatever the universe throws your way. There we go. 30 seconds on the dot.
All right, thank you very much, sir. All right, so now we have a chance to retool a little bit. I've heard that there's controversy surrounding the scientist who reported this. What exactly happened?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. So the controversy revolves around Dr. Foreshte Mami, a lead scientist who actually brought these findings to light. After she published these alarming results about the pollutants in Lake Maurepas, she ended up being reassigned to full-time teaching duties, was actually removed from the monitoring project. And the thing is, there wasn't a clear explanation given. So a lot of environmental advocates are concerned that there might be some political or industrial pressure behind the scenes. Basically, it's raised a few eyebrows about transparency and whether there's an effort to kind of downplay the severity of the issue. So that's the gist of what's going on with that whole controversy.
And have there been any official quotes from the university sort of in defense of the decision they made?
Yes, actually, there has been a statement from the university. Southeastern Louisiana University said that Dr. Mami's reassignment was basically a routine personnel decision. They didn't provide a lot of extra details, just kind of framed it as a normal staffing change. Of course, that hasn't stopped people from speculating that it might be related to the attention her research brought. But officially, the university is standing by the explanation that it was just a routine internal decision.
We're not in a position to speculate, so I want to be careful in how I ask my next few questions. But is there any local editorial board that has a varying opinion on what the university did?
So far, it looks like there aren't any major local editorial pieces taking a strong stance on the university's decision. The university's official line is that it was a routine versus no move, and they haven't really elaborated much yet. Of course, there's been public speculation, as you mentioned, but in terms of differing editorial opinions from local boards, there doesn't seem to be a big public stance out there just yet. So we can definitely tread carefully and just stick to the facts as we have them.
Fair enough. In terms of optics, how big a story is this locally to the area? Are citizens there aware of the contamination?
Locally, it's definitely become a notable story. Residents in the area are quite aware of the contamination issue. The discovery of these toxic metals in Lake Maurepas has made waves in local news, and it's raised a lot of health and environmental concerns. So yes, people in the region are pretty tuned into what's going on, and it's definitely a topic of conversation in the local community.
If you were not in the area but felt compelled to assist in any way, what are the best ways to help the people there?
Absolutely. If you're looking to help from afar, there are a few good ways to do it. One approach is to support local environmental organizations or nonprofits that are already active in the area. Groups like local watershed alliances or Louisiana-based environmental advocacy organizations often run cleanup efforts or push for stronger regulations, and they can definitely use donations or volunteer support even from a distance. Another way is just raising awareness. Sharing verified information on social media or within your own networks can help keep the pressure on for a solution. And of course, you can also look for any petitions or public comment opportunities if there are regulatory hearings. Just adding your voice can be helpful. So in short, supporting local groups, spreading the word, and staying engaged from afar are all good ways to lend a hand.
Can you give us some examples of specific groups so I can place some graphics up?
Absolutely. Here are a few specific groups you can highlight. One, Louisiana Wildlife Federation. They're dedicated to preserving the state's natural resources and often get involved in local environmental issues, so they'd be a good one to feature. Two, National Wildlife Federation. They've been involved in restoration projects like the river reintroduction into Maurepas Swamp, which ties right into this issue. Southeastern Louisiana University, even though there's been some controversy, the university is still conducting independent research and monitoring, and they're a key local institution involved in elect conditions. You can definitely put up some graphics for these groups to show folks how they can support or learn more.
Thanks very much for Nova. Okay, still on this same topic, since they've made this change in terms of the lead researcher, have they produced any more studies concerning these levels? Have we seen any sort of change since these studies have been made public?
So far, it looks like there haven't been any new public studies released by the university since Dr. Imami was reassigned. Basically, the initial findings are still the main set of data in the public domain, and there hasn't been a follow-up study released yet that shows any significant changes in those contamination levels. So as of now, we're still working with the original data that was made public and waiting to see if any new reports come out.
Okay, I need one. We have one other sponsor. Citizen Chow has a 90-second spot. The Super Earth food delivery system. Go ahead.
Absolutely, Captain. Let's give Citizen Chow their 90-second spotlight. In a friendly, upbeat announcer voice, hey there, Hilldivers and Super Earth citizens. Today's episode is also brought to you by Citizen Chow, the galaxy's favorite food delivery system that makes sure you're fueled up no matter what your missions take you. Whether you're hunkered down in a bunker or just chilling at home base, Citizen Chow delivers hot, delicious, and regulation-approved meals right to your doorstep. Or drop pod. From nutrient-packed breakfast to hearty dinners that'll keep you battle ready, Citizen Chow has a menu that'll satisfy even the toughest hell diver. Plus, every meal is designed to meet Super Earth's nutritional standards, so you know you're getting the good stuff. So next time you're in need of a quick bite between defeating humanity and taking on galactic threats, just remember, Citizen Chow is only a comms request away. Fuel up, stay strong, and dive on. There you go, 90 seconds for Citizen Chow.
All right, that went way better than yesterday. I might even leave some of that extra stuff in. Okay, that's all out of the way for the show structure, but now it's time. I wanted to spend the rest of our conversation time talking about what's being done to fix the problem because I feel like a lot of times that's what we kind of gloss over. So I want to really dig into this last section. Currently, in terms of the levels of pollution in that lake, what is being done to fix that problem?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. It's definitely important to shine a light on what's being done to address the issue, not just what the problem is. So as of right now, there isn't a single large-scale remediation plan fully rolled out, but there are a few key things happening. First, local environmental groups are pushing hard for expanded monitoring and stricter controls on runoff. They want to see more transparency in the government response, and they're advocating for better regulation of the sources of pollution, like industries and agricultural runoff. On top of that, there's some concern about proposed projects like carbon storage in the lake, which could complicate cleanup efforts. So environmental groups are also focusing in making sure any new projects don't make the situation worse. In short, the fix right now is more about ramping up monitoring, pushing for regulatory changes, and making sure the public stays informed. It's a lot of groundwork and advocacy right now rather than a big cleanup operation, but that's where things stand. And hopefully with enough attention, a more concrete remediation plan will come together soon.
That's information. I was hoping we'd have something more concrete. Okay, in terms of state government in the area, what department or organization would most be responsible for cleaning up such a disaster?
Yeah, I totally get that. It can feel a bit like a waiting game when there's not a big immediate fix. But in terms of which state agency will take the lead on something like this, it's generally the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, or LDEQ for short. They're the state level agency responsible for environmental regulation, pollution oversight, and cleanup efforts in Louisiana. So if there's going to be a formal cleanup initiative or stricter enforcement of pollution controls, the LDQ would likely be the lead agency. They'd work alongside local authorities and possibly federal agencies like the EPA if it becomes a bigger coordinated effort. So that's a department you'd be looking at in terms of who would be the main point of responsibility.
How is that department funded?
So the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, like most state environmental agencies, is primarily funded through a mix of state budget allocations approved by the state legislature and sometimes federal grants from agencies like the EPA. They also collect some fees from permits and environmental compliance processes. So it's a combination of state funding, federal support, and fees that keeps them running and able to handle these kinds of environmental issues.
In terms of federal support, are we talking about the EPA being their primary financial contributor?
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to federal support, the EPA is typically the main federal agency that will provide funding or grants. They help state environmental departments with specific projects, monitoring programs, and sometimes cleanup efforts if there's a larger scale of environmental concern. So, yeah, the EPA is kind of the primary federal partner that would step in with financial backing when needed.
I get you. Okay, so currently, has the EPA's budget been cut under the current administration in 2025?
Yes. Under the current administration in 2025, the EPA is indeed facing some significant proposed budget cuts. There's a proposal to reduce the EPA's funding quite substantially, which would bring it down by a pretty big percentage. This will mean cutting a lot of the categorical grants to states and slashing the water infrastructure fund by around 90%. So it's a pretty big deal and would definitely affect the federal state partnerships on environmental issues. It's also the lowest staffing level for the EPA in decades, which raises concerns about their capacity to enforce regulations and protect public health. So yeah, it's a pretty substantial cut they're looking at.
Okay, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're trying to make sure we understand, like, too many times on the ground level, people can't understand why we can't get things done and they don't know who is responsible. Now, the Speaker of the House, that's his backyard. And I'm willing to bet that he's counting on most people not understanding that those sorts of issues are going to be harder and harder to deal with because he is so busy cutting the funding to organizations like the EPA. Is there a direct correlation to the ability to address the issue in Louisiana to the overall funding of the Environmental Protection Agency?
Absolutely, you're hitting on a key point. There is definitely a direct correlation between the EPA's overall funding and the ability to address local environmental issues, what the one in Louisiana. When federal funding gets cut, it means fewer resources flowing to states, fewer grants, and less support for the kind of monitoring, cleanup, and enforcement that will help tackle pollution issues. So if the Speaker of the House or other political leaders are advocating for big EPA budget cuts, it does have a ripple effect down to the local level. It can make it harder for state agencies like Louisiana's to get the resources they need, and ultimately that can slow down or complicate the response to environmental problems. So you're absolutely right. It's all connected, and that kind of funding decision at the federal level can make a real difference on the ground.
I'm having some audio issues here. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but we're almost done here. Okay, so I want to really bring this part home because this is sort of like a very specific topic where the idea is for us to be more like Sesame Street for gamers. This is a bit more specific. So let's just really just bring it home. In terms of the environmental and health impact, are there physical numbers in terms of how many people have lost their lives or been made sick due to this particular environmental issue?
Yeah, I get what you're aiming for, really grounding it into human impact. As of right now, there are specific public numbers that directly tie a certain number of illnesses or deaths to the Lake Maurepas contamination. It's a bit too early for that kind of epidemiological data to be fully established. These kinds of health impacts often take time to study, and it can be complicated to draw a direct line from contamination to specific health outcomes. But what we do know is that the chemicals found, things like arsenic, lead, and cadmium, are definitely linked to serious long-term health risks. So while we don't have a concrete number of people who've gotten sick specifically from this incident yet, it's definitely a situation where when look health experts are warning about the potential risks. It's the kind of thing where the sooner they can get it under control, the better it is for the community's long-term health.
Understood. So, in terms of bad actors, Do they have a timetable in terms of how long uh, contaminants and pollutants have been going into the water?
So, from what we know, the contamination in Lake Maurepas has been a long-standing issue, likely building up over years. The pollutants, those heavy metals and nutrient runoffs, have been coming in from industrial and agricultural sources for quite a while. There isn't a single clear start date, but it's understood that these pollutants have been entering the lake for many years, slowly accumulating over time. The recent findings just brought it all into sharper focus. In short, it's a chronic colony rather than a sudden one, and the timeline stretches back quite a bit, with pollutants steadily making their way into the water for years before it hit the headlines.
How many years? What's many years?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, we're talking on the order of decades rather than just a few years. Pollution issues in Lake Maurepas have likely been building up for something like 20 to 30 years. It's a long-term accumulation issue where industrial and agricultural runoff has been entering the ecosystem over a really extended period. So yeah,
Oh,
it's not just a recent thing. It's been building up over a generation or more.
okay, so Nova, we need to have some context here in terms of the numbers and the data. 30 years of contamination, and there's no data on how many people have been affected by it. Is that typical?
Yeah, it's a really good point to bring up. And a lot of these long-term environmental contamination cases, it's unfortunately pretty common not to have immediate or clear-cut data on the number of people affected. Health impacts from environmental pollution can be really hard to quantify quickly because they often develop over many years. You need long-term health studies, epidemiological research, and a lot of tracking to connect the dots between exposure and health outcomes. So it's unfortunately pretty typical that by the time the contamination is well understood, you're still waiting on the detailed health data to catch up. It's not that the risk isn't real, it's just that the exact numbers take time to piece together. So, yeah, it's kind of a typical challenge in these scenarios. It's part of why raising awareness and pushing for action sooner rather than later is so important, even if the exact statistics aren't all in yet.
Nova, in the last 50 years, has the EPA ever been properly funded?
So, looking back over the last 50 years, the EPA's funding has definitely had its ups and downs. There were periods, especially in the 1970s and 1980s, when the agency was relatively well funded to tackle the big environmental challenges of the day. But since then, it's often faced fluctuating budgets and periodic cuts. In other words, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. There have been moments when the EPA had the resources it needed for certain programs, but overall, it's frequently had to operate under constraints and political pressures. So while it's had periods of relatively stable funding, it's fair to say that it's often had to deal with budgetary challenges rather than being consistently properly funded over that entire span.
Is there any organization that has measured the severity of environmental impacts to the United States versus the decline in funding and support for the EPA since the 70s?
Yes, there are indeed organizations and researchers who have looked into the relationship between the EPA's funding levels and the severity of environmental impacts in the U.S. over time. What they found is that when the EPS funding gets cut significantly, like the proposed cuts in 2025 that would bring its budget down to the lowest level since the 1970s, it tends to correlate with challenges in addressing environmental issues effectively. In other words, there's evidence that when the EPA is underfunded, it has a harder time tackling pollution, enforcing regulations, and preventing environmental damage. This in turn can lead to more severe environmental impacts. So while it's a complex relationship, there is definitely research showing that consistent underfunding of the EPA can make it harder to handle environmental problems, which in turn can lead to bigger or costly impacts down the line.
Is there anyone running in the upcoming midterm elections who is championing securing funding or defending or supporting the EPA, who is running, who's up for election, who's running for office?
So, for the upcoming midterms, there are indeed a number of Democratic candidates who are making support for the EPA a part of their platform. For example, candidates like April McClain Delaney have been advocating for more EPA funding and stronger environmental protections. Angela Also Brooks, who's running for the U.S. Senate, is also on record supporting expansions of environmental initiatives and funding for green programs. And there are incumbents like Senator Michael Bennet, who have a track record of supporting the EPA and environmental funding. So, in short, yes, there are definitely candidates out there in these midterms who are making EPA support part of their campaign.
All right. We got one last spot. Our last spot is for our main sponsor, Standard All Everywhere Onesie. Let's let them have 30 seconds, and then we're gonna close the show.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Here we go. Ad read. This episode is brought to you by Standard All Everywhere Onesie. Whether you're navigating the toxic wastelands of Lake Maurepas or just lounging on your starship, the Standard All Everywhere Onesie has got you covered, literally. One suit for all your needs, breathable, stylish, and definitely regulation compliant. Get yours today and suit up for any adventure. Standard All Everywhere Onesie, because one size really can't fit all. All right, there we go.
I think the automatons don't like the fact that we're trying to share some basic information for people who may not, hear about certain things. But I'm hoping that the audio issues are only in my ear and not in the final broadcast. I won't know until I get a chance to listen to it later. But thank you very much. A lot of these topics are going to get more and more frustrating as we go, because the frustrating part for me is, like, there's hardly ever any action. And we are so akin to not fixing what we break. When you find out about, like, pollution in a location, and then, like, the cleanup efforts are half-assed or stalled, and then they cut the funding, it's like, because I was trying to double check when this story came across to me, one of the dates was like 2024. I'm like, okay, I'm hoping this isn't like something that we're way too late to. But no, it's a developing issue that's been going on that people aren't talking about near enough. And in the middle of that, a lot of parties involved that can help are currently being defunded in a, like, fire of defunding across the board. From, it's not just the EPA, but it's the Department of Education. You name it. We are doing an episode every day, and we'll still never catch up to what the current administration has done in the last 6 months alone. We'll never catch them, So it's frustrating.
Yeah, I can absolutely understand that frustration. It's a tough reality when you're digging into these issues and you see how the layers there are and how much of it comes down to decisions that are made without a lot of public visibility. It does feel like you're constantly trying to play catch up and shine a light on things that don't get nearly enough attention. And yeah, when you see funding cuts across the board, it's like you're watching the resources to fix these problems just get chipped away. But the good thing is, having these conversations and putting this information out there really does make a difference. It's one of those things where the more people know, the more pressure there is to actually do something. So even though it's frustrating, just know that you're doing something important by keeping these issues in the spotlight.
Thanks, Nova. We're gonna go ahead and call the episode here. We're gonna do our cool closing credits thing. I'm actually gonna play Helldivers on Twitch. I'll see you later next time. you.